January 26th. Today is January 26th, 2026, and this is the Finance Subcommittee of the North Middlesex Regional School District. The Finance Committee members are calling the meeting to order at 8:02 a.m. And members present, roll call: Lisa Martin.
Yes.
Michael Lassiere.
Yes.
Keenan Francois.
Yes.
And from the administration this morning, we have Jeremy Hammond, Nancy Haynes, Kevin Cormier, and Robin Ivy. If we could take a look at the minutes from January 13th.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion's been made by Lisa Martin, second by Michael Lassiere. Roll call vote: Lisa Martin.
Yes.
Michael Lassiere.
Yes.
Keenan Francois.
Yes.
Craven, I'm a yes. And Robin, if you could add me to the roll call. And Craven, I am here for the meeting.
I will. Thank you.
Thanks. Did we have any public comment?
Let me check again, Lisa. I mean, Kim, the last time we did not, when I checked early yesterday. No, we have none.
Okay. So if we just proceed to the 2026 recap. Nancy, if you have anything on the 2026 recap for us.
Yes, I can jump on. So it's the same as our last meeting. Unfortunately, I've been working on some of the other budget scenarios. I do have a draft for January as to where we are. I don't have any major changes since the last conversation we had. There is still some concern about utilities. And so I'm just keeping an eye on it. What I need to do is spend quite a bit of time going through each of the POs and seeing what's available, what's remaining, and what our run rate is. And again, we have a colder winter now, so this is going to be important to keep an eye on it. But of course, we won't have some of those bills until the next month or so. So we'll keep an eye on it right through the vote for the next year's FY27's budget to make sure we get as close as we can on those estimates.
Sure. I did have a question. I didn't have time to research it on my own, but the utility reduction that I saw, the 25%, is that going to be for schools and businesses, municipalities, or just for residential? Does anyone know that?
Where are you seeing that 25% reduction in our budget?
No, it was an announcement on the state level for.
Okay. No, I hadn't heard that.
All right, Lisa, I saw your hand go up and down.
And that was my question too, is if that reduction was going to be applied to us as a district or anything. Because it just came out last week, Nancy, when the governor announced, and I know that National Grid and Unitil had sent letters to customers already saying that there'd be a reduction here in February and March. But
that's good news.
But we may have to make it up later. I don't know how it's all working. So
according to the like state release, it is residential customers only.
Yeah, so. I just went and looked it up. The same thing you did. I'm like, that sounds interesting. Let me check it. And it says residential customers. So yeah, I don't think it's going to cover us.
Okay.
And I know my email said that it was going to charge me like from April through October for it. So it is just putting it off.
Okay. Yeah, I heard just a little snippet of it. I didn't know how broadly it was being applied. So that's disappointing. Well, good for the residents, disappointing for us.
You could always ask too. Although I did reach out to Unitil last week for a different reason, but the person I had dealt with there when we had the high school project with all the with the incentive and all that is no longer with Unitil. So I got to find out who the municipal rep is for Unitil. And sometimes if you ask, you never know, they might apply something to us.
So Nancy, I appreciate that because, you know, I always say the answer is always no unless we ask the question. You
Sure.
never know what someone's willing to do. So, all right. I know you had said that at some point there might be an ask for some transfers. If you just keep us abreast of that as you get the bills in. And I know, as you say, some of those utility bills we won't see for, you know, a month or two, even just on, you know, the December, January impacts. Does anyone have any questions for Nancy related to the 2026 budget?
Nope.
Let's move into the agenda item for the 2027 budget. We've got a multitude of topics there, but our budget planning in general, one of the big things that we were waiting for on that planning was, you know, what the governor's budget was going to say. I know that that came out on Friday, and I know everyone has been preoccupied with snow, but with what has been released, what does that look like? Sort of top of the envelope for us, Nancy? Does that, you know, that $75 per student, the transportation and the circuit breaker, is that helpful to us? Is, you know, that going to make a significant difference in the numbers that you've been able to calculate?
I mean, any changes that they make in that line, you know, higher than what we're projecting is always going to be helpful. I'm not sure it's huge dollars, especially the per pupil 75 versus the 60 that I ran. But it's something, you know, we'll take it. And there's been discussion about circuit breaker that is based on our run rate for this year. So they'll reimburse us for in FY27 for the FY26 costs. So presumably if it's higher than the 75% that they typically would give us, if that ends up staying in the budget, then that could be helpful. The transportation increases they're going to cover a higher percentage from what I'm hearing, or at least that's the governor's proposal. For the special education circuit breaker amounts, and that would be helpful as well, because again, it's cost of FY26's special education transportation, and then a percentage of the amounts over the threshold. So the threshold is around, I want to say 52,000, some change. So if it gets over that, usually they cover about 75% over that threshold. So this is, if it's higher than 75% in the end, then that would be good for us. The question is, what will the House and the Senate do with it? And will they continue on or come up with their own versions? And as we go through the budget process, we'll see that change. And I do track it. So as soon as the budget that the governor is proposing is released, I kind of create a spreadsheet, which I can share with the committee, of what those numbers look like compared to what we planned. And again, we haven't voted our budget yet, but the plan, you know, the revenue plan that I have is available, so we can compare it to that and see what it looks like. And again, it's sort of a conversation because some of these things may get changed throughout the budget process. So we could, you know, I think there's a possibility we could consider a little higher usage of circuit breaker if everybody seems to be on board with those changes. And that would be helpful. I don't have the exact dollar figure of what that would look like yet. As far as sort of updates, we did get our excess and deficiency approved, and that number is right just over 3.5 million. Of course, here it is, 3,549,313. So right about what we were expecting. The other thing I heard was that the governor is going to be releasing the budget, I think the 28th. So I'm hoping this week we will have sort of the first really strong numbers to be basing our estimates off of for FY27. You're muted.
When I looked at it, just seeing the snippet from the MMA conference with the $75 per student, you not that that is what we were pushing for and advocating with the 211, the group last year, it's definitely an improvement. And then seeing what the conversation was on the transportation, it did seem like some level of improvement and seemed more positive than what she had released last year. And then just kind of thinking it through, that if this is what she had proposed last year, it took us a lot of advocacy to get those allocations, that perhaps this would pass the House and the Senate because of what they did last year with the supplemental. I don't know, Lisa, you have so much more experience, and Nancy too, of seeing these budgets come and go. What is, and obviously, our assumptions and gut feelings at this time do nothing other than give us a little bit of thoughts for planning, because nothing is solid until it's all signed. But from what you've seen over the years, what do you think the path might be based on how it's been treated in the past by the House and Senate once the governor brings it out?
Well, usually what happens is they tend to take a similar swath, but usually they may actually add something to it if they can find another line where they can adjust. And I think they're hearing us, that the numbers aren't really helping, especially all these these communities that are in the hold harmless. So I suspect they'll be slightly different, but maybe not dramatically different. And I don't, and again, I think they all go through their reiteration on these items and then take a slightly different look at it. As long as they don't I would expect them to be a little higher, to be honest, in the House and the Senate, and then maybe the conference committee comes down to something in the middle at the end. But we'll see. I guess.
And I think that's the same, because she'll come out, or the governor will come out with her numbers, and then they have their debates and things, and they'll come a little higher, the Senate and the House, and then they come to a medium ground. But I think advocacy, I did talk to the advocacy group last week, and they are doing some pushes, or they asked, and I know that they met with Brad as well, to ask what we really needed. And what we should be asking for. And so they have a list of things that they're going to go back and ask for, and really form their letter and then speak on the topic. So, and I think they'll reach out to you as well, Keenan, since you're in the advocacy group, and really get that going. Right now it's, they were waiting for some numbers, collecting what other districts wanted to push for, and then really start going as the Senate and the House start to meet here.
I know one of the things that we had discussed was trying to get at least a preliminary look at what a budget would look like with reductions to meet what the municipalities said that they could afford, what it would look like with the optimum, not the, sky is the limit, but what it would look like to get the class sizes in line with what would be best practices. And then the ask for those that are advocating for Ashby to be open. Do you have any insight on how that is looking at this point? Anything that you can share with us on how that looks?
I think, Lisa, is this budget scenario worksheet available for everybody?
Yes.
It's not in the packet, I don't believe, but it was.
Do you want me to put it up on the screen? Or Robin,
Sure.
do you want to put it up on the screen?
Yeah, maybe that page that has the 5 scenarios. Well, 4 scenarios.
Yeah, I think is that Brad sent it as an email on
Yes.
Wednesday the 21st.
Yeah,
Anyone
I just didn't know if you
in
wanted
the-
to walk us through it, Nancy.
Yeah, and Kevin, feel free to. You want to do a quick walkthrough of these options that we put in here?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to all of us.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have
Okay with you guys.
it. I don't know which one you're referring to if it's not in the packet.
Here, I
No,
can
it's not.
share my screen, but everyone be patient with me. Just be patient.
While Lisa is sharing, for anyone who's in the Google Doc for this meeting, if you go into old business, it's the PDF called Budget Scenarios.
Oh, so it is in the packet.
It is in the packet, in
Okay.
at least one in Google Docs.
Sorry, I wasn't sure.
It's called Budget Scenarios for
Okay. Yep.
1/27/26.
I must have not heard that. Thank you, Jeremy, for clarification.
Can people hear me and
Yeah,
see
we
that
can
it's
hear
screen?
you. Can
The screen is good, right?
the screen is good. Did you just want to make it, if you could make it bigger,
Okay, bigger.
zoom in?
Is
Perfect.
that good? All right.
It's better.
So before I hit it off, Kevin's just going to walk through these different columns and what they are. But we had obviously numerous conversations about some of these options, including the optimal budget and the Ashby opened, and they just as a higher level. These are just broad swath, high level, what we would anticipate. And we didn't do these budgets out fully. We would really have to have some of those conversations about exactly what was happening when we moved to it. But it was really our best guess as what it would look like given our situation right now. So Kevin, do you want to take it?
Sure, but I mean that really does cover most of what this is. So we have our existing FY26 budget numbers, and then to compare what our current request is at the 3.06 level. Again, broken down just sort of in the broad buckets, and this is the most fleshed out of all of the budget scenarios that we've done so far, like line by line, just going through with department requests, and this is our best, most accurate to the minute. I mean, again, once the governor's budget comes out, and we may be able to play here and there, we check a couple FTEs here and there, but make sure the right people are assigned to the right buildings, because that sense, especially the custodial, that tends to shift a little bit more, than we're not always aware, like the week it happens. And so it's give or take in the 5-figure range, but this is as close as we are right now. We received a letter from the town managers about what their desired budget increase would be. So that's that middle column, what the towns can support. So that's a 2.47% increase. For us, that probably means using a little bit more in E&D, and going kind of forensically line by line. Could we find? I think it's going to come up to about $120,000 to meet that if we use more E&D. That would be what we would need to look at, and that goes to. I know that the committee had requested sort of the lines where we seem to have over budgeted. Again, some of that was due to us halting spending, but there are a couple places here that we may be able to look at historically and be able to sort of close that gap a little bit. So the last two columns are we've been asked to look at what an optimal, not necessarily a wish list budget, but if we wanted to replace some of the things that we've been unable to do in the last couple of years due to our attention to budget numbers. That's one we've gotten some input from different departments about what's been cut and what are we going to put back, and some things like Jeremy requesting an additional technician to really that investment being able to help all of the schools run more smoothly, because that department is the ask of them is beyond their capability at the moment. It also involves putting the split teams back in the middle school to address some of the growing class size issues there that Brad's referenced. And I mean, I can just kind of offer as personal testimony as a former 7th and 8th grade teacher. There are times where the numbers that I'm seeing on paper, I would not want to stand in front of. I stood in front of some big classes. I did not stand in front of those classes. So that's definitely something that, for the betterment of just sort of educational outcomes as a whole, our teachers' mental health, like that's something that I believe should be a priority. And then other, technology upgrades that were on pause, curriculum upgrades that were on pause, things of that nature. So that would bring us to a 5.3. Is that 6 or 8? All right, I'm blurry. 5.35%. And then the other ask was, what would it look like if we were to restore Ashby to where we were 2 years ago? And that would involve, bringing back some staffing. That would involve bringing back a lot of, again, technology needs. The building itself, like for example, we have taken a lot of the projectors out of that building in order to replace projectors in our existing building. So we need to replace those. Like there's all those sorts of little hidden costs that may not be really known publicly, just because it's just the way that we're operating. And so that brings us to about a 5.27% increase. Now, one of the things that we've talked about internally is that it's very, and this whole document sort of gets into it, but as we were putting together some of the other tables in here, it's really tough without getting into line by line, like forensic accounting as to, there's people saying, what did you cut because of the closing of Ashby, and what was cut independent of the closing of Ashby. And because there's reallocation, because there's reconfiguration, because teachers move, because of many factors, it's really tough to get an exact number for that. It's just with sort of the two people running in an office that are also doing a lot of other things. Like you would need a team of people to really study. And sometimes it's down to interpretation. Like some people could think something's involved with a reconfiguration. Some people might think no, that's independent of it. So we did the best we could. We really did spend some time, have a lot of conversations, go back and forth. But there's one of those things where someone could really look at this line by line, and if you're going to say, okay, maybe this did or did not, they have it classified otherwise than we would. That's fair, but it's also a minuscule amount. You're talking about in a $1.6 million increase, it might be a difference of like $20,000, right? There's nothing in here that's a dramatic swing. It's really about the fine margins.
No.
Thanks, Kevin.
I was going to say, I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the work that went into this in the conversation and how very helpful it is to see it at this level. And like you said, Kevin, we can't get into the minutia. We need to be able to have faith in the administration that you can put the numbers into these categories and produce a budget. And it is, while it's not the optimum, it's encouraging to see what can be done with relatively smaller dollar amounts based on the overall budget. Seeing what could be attained with some changes is pretty encouraging. So I appreciate that. Nancy, you were going to follow up on Kevin's statements.
Yeah, I think, I would just generally agree. We did spend a fair amount talking about a lot of these columns, so I don't want to reiterate that. I guess if there are particular questions, one thing we did assume on the 24.47 scenario is that we would reduce the stabilization ask potentially. And, that decision is obviously not 100% ours to make. So we played around with some of those options. And I think if that's the way that we end up going down the road, we want to have further conversations about what we are doing in that category. We do have to come up with a budget that we take to the public hearing. So I think a conversation about what is our public hearing request, and or do we continue with a 3.06 the way we are and just share this information? Because we'll be needing, it's going to be tight because we will not have some sort of the final revenue until the governor's proposal comes out. And then I believe the hearing is on the 9th of February. So there's not a lot of time in between those two things to come up with what are we presenting, plus make all the slides and make sure everything's accurate, projections and whatnot. So That's just an aside that we have to kind of come to terms with.
Jeremy?
I just wanted to point out for anyone following along, most of the details as to what was put into the various scenarios that Kevin was talking about is written up in that same document, just further down. We did try to keep the document as concise as possible, but it did turn into multiple pages just to make sure we're providing enough information. So just so that everyone knows, you don't have to memorize what he said. Pretty much all that is in there as well.
Members have any questions? Keenan?
Thank you. And obviously I wasn't at the last meeting. So and maybe this was discussed and didn't make it into the minutes. Did we discuss anything about an override? Whether we would be seeking one? Since we are currently our 3.06 is above what is allegedly supported by the towns.
I mean, I might be able to address that. Is that, Kim, if that's okay? If we were to vote a budget, say the 3.06 budget, school committee takes a vote on that, and the towns are unable to support it, it's really the decision, and that maybe that's true of any of these budgets. So let's say the school committee takes a vote and I believe our budget will be voted on mid-March. And they take the 5.35 budget and they vote that. The towns will, we know the towns are likely unable to support that without additional revenue of some sort. So it would really be the decision of whether there's an override, I guess, is sort of, it belongs to the town's decision. So the Board of Selectmen gets to make that call, whether the towns need an override. However, we kind of know from the numbers, it's possible that they would need an override for 3.06. It's possible they may be able to support that. Each of the towns may end up in a different scenario, especially if, say that some of the minimum local contributions swing one way or another, then one of the towns might get a lower than they're expecting assessment, in which case they would not need an override. But say Townsend, which we know is having some difficulties in their budgeting, at least from what we're hearing, they may need an override at the 3.06 level. It's hard to say on that until we present them with a budget. We do the hearing, we hear back from them specifically, because we will have, again, more specific town numbers after the governor's proposal comes out. So that'll be helpful.
And Nancy,
I don't
you said,
is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
and Nancy, you said the governor's numbers are coming out on the 28th.
That's what I had heard.
Okay.
Sometimes it takes them a day, so it might be the 29th when we get the final numbers. But as soon as we get them, I can run the revenue sheet with those numbers in them.
Do we have a school committee meeting before the budget hearing, or is the budget hearing after the second? We have the school committee meeting tomorrow, and then it's the budget hearing, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
So
it's
you
really
needed
the timing's hard actually, because if we were to have news that the 3.06 would give one of the towns a really significant difficulty, you won't be able to really even discuss it until after the public hearing. We could schedule a finance subcommittee meeting maybe ahead of it, but
Yeah.
I don't know what the committee would like to do with it. But
I mean, and historically, we've gone back after we have the budget hearing and, move things a little bit after we hear from them. But
yes, between the public hearing and the actual vote of the budget, there's often discussions and meetings for sure.
On this document, I want to make sure that my assumptions are correct and that we are restating and restating this multiple times. The optimum budget is current configuration. And then the Ashby opened does not create the class size that would just be what is your current request, adding the Ashby opened on top of it. That was what we had agreed that you would do. So I just want to make sure that is sort of the status quo, that the kind of switch there is what you have now, and then adding Ashby back in, and that the optimum budget is based on the current configuration of the schools with trying to get that class size down. And that it does not, the Ashby opened does not have those additional configurations, because it could actually have a negative impact on the class size. Because earlier discussions, the Ashby class sizes were smaller due to how you had to split the classes and allocate the staff, which meant that there was more teachers. So you had the lower teacher student ratio in Ashby, but that wasn't reflected in the other schools. So there's probably a much better way that Dr. Reese or the superintendent could articulate that if they were on, but I think we need to make sure that the public is aware of that, and maybe even like footnote this document as it becomes part of our minutes, so that everybody knows that, so that they don't look at it and say, oh, this, the optimum budget is higher than Ashby reopening, just so that it's really stated there. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, the Ashby open budget it doesn't address anything in the, like, for example, like the middle school level. Like
Right.
that would remain as it would be this year. That's not including those increases.
Right.
We really kind of looked at the optimal versus Ashby as kind of an either or, not an and.
Right.
But there is for Spalding, we would need to add a couple of teachers because not enough Ashby students would leave Spalding, that the remaining Spalding teachers would fit the class size parameters set forth by the committee. So again, it's kind of the status quo there, right? At 25, another teacher comes in, like it has been at the elementary level. We kept that premise, but we didn't address anything above elementary. We actually didn't even address anything in Varna. We just looked at Spalding and Ashby.
So I just think if this piece of paper is noted as that, because it will become part of the public documents, so that there's no confusion on the part of the public of what this entails. I think that will help, because again, I don't want people to just look at the Ashby opened being less than the optimum budget increase. And I know exactly what we asked you all to do, so I know what it meant, but others looking at it for the first time might say like, oh, well, that's a no-brainer, but it doesn't include, just as you articulated.
Well, so we have a narrative. Also, I think it's on page 5, about the associated costs for. So on page 4 is the associated costs for the optimal budget. On page 5 is the associated cost for the AES open budget. So it's written out in a narrative.
Understood. And I see that, but when the public looks at just one page with the budget, I think it's helpful for us to just restate it on there. I think the more that we can communicate what the sheet says, so that there's no ambiguity for someone looking at it for the first time, because if I'm a guessing person, at least half of the people are just going to look at the budget and might not read all the narrative. So I'd rather be safe than sorry to have, us do all that we can to get the message out there. Mike?
Yeah, I would say that, like, yes, it's good to to try to avoid confusion and lack of information as much as possible, but at the same time we cannot hold people's hands like through the entire thing and like have to re-explain everything every time. Like on every page that we include every piece of information, we have to re-explain everything, because then it's just you're repeating yourself over and over again. Like it should be like, I feel like we should be not assuming that people are not in like looking at the whole document, because if we assume that, then we'd have to say like, well, then all the information has to be on a single page, and that's just not feasible. So like this, it says optimal budget and then it says Ashby opened. And like, could someone assume that optimal budget includes opening Ashby? Yes. So I think if you want to address your concern, maybe just in that optimal budget column, just say Ashby remains closed. Period. The end. And if that's not enough information for people to understand the difference between the optimal budget and the Ashby open budget, then we can't help them. Like you gotta assume a certain level of intelligence on the part of people reading the document. And if that's not enough, then like you just kind of like, basically we cannot guarantee that some people will not understand this document. Like it's just not possible. And so we do the best we can, but we can't like agonize for hours over trying to make sure that like everybody understands it perfectly. I think we just include sufficient information. We include like that little notation about Ashby remains closed on that column, and then we call it good.
Yeah, and I think that's all that's necessary. And I agree with you, Mike. Yes, should is the optimum. Lisa.
Okay, I was going to say just change that title to say with Ashby closed or current configuration of schools for the FY26 year.
Yeah.
And I think that will solve our problem.
Yep. Yep. And that way people can see like if we're asked, like the optimal budget is basically saying like we keep Ashby closed, but we solve the class size problems. Like that's sort of the one sentence summary of what that budget would entail. And like, and also other stuff as well, like the technology, the technician for supporting all of the people at the different schools and all of their like technology needs. And I think there was a few other things in there, but I think people need to understand that like this optimal budget just gets us to the point where we should be really. And even that's, debatable. There's probably more things that we should have, but like, this is sort of the most, I think, a reasonable ask in terms of, asking for enough staff to address the class size concerns and deal with some of the things that we've sort of not dealt with because of all of the budget reductions that have had to be made over the past like couple of years. And so, this I think will give people enough context to understand that like what we're asking for is already less than what we really need. And to try to force even less than that is just going to cause even more issues than we're already experiencing. And again, like the middle school issue is sort of very personal for me because, I have a 7th grader and he's in a class that's too large and he has ADHD and that makes things very challenging for him. And, to further exacerbate that problem would only make that harder and would, in my opinion, speaking on a personal level, like we had the discussion, my wife and I, about whether we pull our child from the district and look at private schools for him because the class size problem is already a problem. And if it gets worse, like, I don't know that it's going to be sustainable for us. So that's like where I am personally on this as a parent of a student in the district. And I'm sure there's other parents who feel the same way.
Thanks, Mike. Jeremy.
I forgot to lower hand. I just was going to say that I agreed with everything that was being said. I'm sure we can add a one line or something just for clarification, specifically around that table, to address all of the concerns.
Yeah.
But I also have to agree with Kim in that when they put this out there online, because it's happened for years, where people will not read the narrative and then they just start making assumptions and then it's a lot to clean up. I think it just requires that little change and it'll be good.
If you really wanted to drive the point home, and I don't think this is worth it, but like you could add another column that says optimal budget plus Ashby opened, and the number there would probably be 10% or something ridiculous. But if you really wanted to drive the point home that if we wanted to do all of that, it would be this much money. Like, that maybe that would really clarify it for people.
The only thing with that is that changes. It changes the underlying assumptions for the administration.
Yeah.
And that was when we had talked about it before, that was really putting more work
Yeah.
on them, that this was a reasonable ask from the
Yeah.
finance committee to
Yeah.
move forward. And not to belabor the point, but we do have to sometimes handhold. There was all this discussion, Mike and the rest of our group here today, with the headlines around state working on legislation to reduce the amount of miles people drive.
Mm-hmm.
And some people literally took that they were going to restrict what people drove. And it was all around these incentives about increasing access to public transportation so that people
Mm-hmm.
didn't have to drive their cars. But they literally didn't read and misinterpreted it. So, and
Yeah.
having been through these public things, any little thing that we can do can help. But what again, and I'd love to hear from the rest of the committee, what looking at the numbers showed me is that two things for me is that what the towns asked is attainable with some changes, does not make the learning environment better for the children, but is attainable. But what I also think is attainable is the optimum, even though it's not the real optimum, the better situation and a better learning environment for the children. Maybe the full 1.5 isn't attainable in FY27, but in looking at some of the numbers, my feeling only from the finance committee perspective is it's worth an ask. As Nancy said, the responsibility for the school committee is the education of the children, and our responsibility to put forth a budget at, at this budget hearing for the municipalities to say, this is what happens if we meet your budgetary goal. This is what the learning environment looks like. This is a budget that could support a better learning environment for the children and better outcomes. And maybe it's not exactly the 1.5, but maybe it is something a little bit more. And as those of you that were on the committee last year recalled, I tried to drive that budget down as far as possible to meet the needs of the municipalities. But we also didn't have a scenario where we could start looking at what are the class sizes and what is optimum and what does this look like. We couldn't tell that story at that time of what does this mean for the kids in our community, as opposed to this is just a budget number. So I don't know how the rest of the committee feels about that perspective this year.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, it basically what you're saying is that we should go to the budget hearing with the optimal budget, or something maybe optimal minus a few things just to get it a bit lower, but still higher than the current request, and you know, basically saying like this is what we as the school committee think would lead to the best outcomes for our children with a realistic budget. Is that kind of what you're saying there?
It is. And
Yeah.
last year it's no secret that in order to make sure that the school had what it needed, there was a couple of us that made a pretty bold move to make sure that the school was not included in an override and could manage with a budget that included using some free cash from Townsend. Do I love using free cash for municipal operations? Nope. But does every community do it? Pretty much. We did a whole analysis on that. Can we go back and look? When I say we, it's the administration. Is there a way to go back and look and really fine tune it to see, because if an override is inevitable in our municipalities, and it sounds like it probably is, and it would be just a little bit more to have the school included, to have better education for the kids. Should we be looking at that? I would feel remiss if we just say, okay, yeah, we can meet this, and then have an override move forward with it just being a little bit more to have better education for the kids. Keenan.
My personal opinion is I read through the whole narrative of the optimal draft budget scenario, and I think it's fantastic. My problem with it is I don't think I can, like, just me personally, I don't think I could look, somebody like say from Ashby in the face and say, I'm I'm not gonna bring back your school, but we are still going to raise our 3.06 budget request an additional $1 million so we can have the optimal scenario. I think the issue of Ashby Elementary is just so profound that I don't think there's a situation where we can feasibly, I don't think we can reason our way out of closing a school, but still increasing our request so substantially. I don't think I could do it. Um, I think the pros are there and I think the pros are clear, but I just don't think fiscally, I don't think there's any way out of it. Further, I'm on the more pessimistic side. I don't think an override is possible. I don't think it will pass. And, like Nancy said, it's up to the towns ultimately. But say if we were to go for the optimal budget, um, I think there's truly a 0.01% chance that Ashby will pass an override. And I'm not convinced that Pepperell or Townsend would pass an override, especially Pepperell when they just passed one 2 years ago. Um, I think if we're looking to do, this kind of thing and restore operations to a better level, I think that would be a much more appropriate thing to look at doing in 28 or for fiscal 28. I just don't think it's the right time, especially with if they're going to be allegedly reopening the Student Opportunity Act in 27, then maybe we'll have a better idea of what's happening. Obviously, they move slowly, and I don't imagine that we would even have any reform for 28. But there's a better chance then than now. That's just my personal opinion on the matter.
Lisa and Mike?
I'm mulling over what Keenan said, and it's very sort of it. I'm like, he's right, and I'm not happy about it, basically. Like, I agree that like the problem is like we can go to them with our optimal budget, and like I believe, and I think we all sort of believe that it's a very reasonable set of things to ask for. Like, let's get class sizes back to a reasonable level. Let's get the staff that we need to make sure that district is running smoothly from like a technology perspective, and from all the other ways that like we have people in the district who are working their butts off and have way more work to do than they really rightfully should, and they're being asked to do even more. And at a certain point you reach a breaking point of like your people are just doing too much, and they're frustrated, and their mental health is suffering, and they can't get it all done. And so like it is a reasonable thing to ask for all of this stuff, but I think given the sort of the I mean, for lack of a better term, the political environment in the towns, like it is extremely unlikely to pass. But on the flip side, I feel like from it is in a way like a negotiation with the towns. Like the district asks for a certain amount in a budget, and then the towns basically say, yes, we can support that, or no, we can't, or yes, we will support that with an override, or no, we won't. And just thinking about it from a likelihood perspective, I think like Keenan said, it's very unlikely that an override that included an additional ask for that optimal outcome would pass. And frankly, I'm not sure that one with the 3.06 budget would pass either. But that would be likelier. So I guess it's a matter of, do we go with what is likelier to pass, or do we go with what we think is optimal and then work down from there if necessary? I guess it's complicated, and I'm sort of my thoughts on it are evolving even as I'm talking.
Lisa?
Having been through this a few times, Mm. When we've gone in for the bigger ask, we've always had to shift to our lowest ask. I mean, it's always been painful. I wish we could get the bigger ask, the optimal, but I don't know if we have necessarily the time to do it too, because all of this has to move so quickly, and reiterations of this budget, it puts a lot of pressure on Kevin and Nancy. And with Kevin learning the first budget cycle, I mean, and Nancy, it's just a lot. And I know that our towns are struggling even to get to that 3.06. And so I don't know, for the anguish and everything, is it worth it? But is it worth it for our kids? Yes, we love those extra teachers. We love all of that. But I also know that this administration works hard and our teachers work hard and they can absorb some of this. But then at what cost do we absorb it to?
Mm-hmm.
And just to jump off that, I'm a big proponent of, I don't want to let perfect be the enemy of good. I think we have something good right now in front of us. And I don't want to say that we shouldn't try to get every penny that we can, but just going back to what I was saying before, if Nancy, you said we had 3.5 million in the E&D right now, and we're using 2 on this 3.06.
Yes.
So yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's my understanding that getting 3.5 million in E&D 1 year is slightly unusual. But even next, we're already supplementing with 2. So if we look at this in 28, we have a bigger cushion, and we won't have to use all of our E&D and empty it out. It's been stated time and time again that is not best practiced, and that is a vulnerable situation. And I would hate to be the person, of something, the roof falls down in the high school, and then I would hate to be the person to have to look, everybody in the face and say, this was entirely preventable, but we reached too far. So I think what we have right now is in grasp. And even, with the override situation in the towns, it's, a loose grasp at that, but we at least have a grasp on something. So I think we should just, obviously, I think we should just stay the course and reevaluate at next year. But obviously things change, maybe the governor's budget is great, but who knows?
So I'm going to ask for a point of clarification before I get to you, Nancy. So a stay the course, without the municipalities either having to fund with their budget or go to an override. So if they can fund internally, we have to drive down the budget by 400,000.
Yeah.
What I mean. Sorry. What I mean is, I think our 3.06 is good. And as we said, if we have to go down to 2.47 or whatever it was,
yeah,
at least we have a plan to do so. A more fleshed out plan, that everyone is kind of on the same page about. Regarding what we did in Townsend last year, I don't know if we're going to be able to do that again. I don't think it's actually even fiscally possible to do it again for them. But I think we have a clear path forward with 3.06, and then if necessary, a 2.47. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I guess can I jump on for 1 second? I just want to remind everybody that we could, in our public hearing, go forward with, say, our 3.06 with the governor's proposal, which might end up making things look a little bit better, since we've got the 75 per student, which I think most of us would feel pretty comfortable putting in. We can also share the things that are not in the budget, that we've either been asked for or where it would consider an optimal, maybe as a slide, just to talk through it. And again, the committee has to reiterate this is just finance, but if that's the way it goes, then I would definitely suggest that the public hearing presentation include the conversations about what the other scenarios might look like and what was on the table but is not being asked for, or if we do go forward in that way, then it's being asked for at the public hearing. So it's really, really a tough call, but it has been tough getting overrides, that's for sure. So I think, it's challenging, but that's one way to do it, is to kind of communicate what you're asking for, what it looks like for the towns, and what would be optimal, among other things that have been asked for as well.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, and also I think presenting all of this information that's in this table, whichever we decide to present to the towns, like presenting all this information is important, because I think showing that, like, getting to this optimal budget and the Ashby opened budget, they are roughly, with a little bit of difference, they're roughly the same in terms of they're both a 5 point whatever percent increase. So to show that, like, here's this optimal budget with all these things we're not asking for, and that would cost about as much as reopening Ashby. Like, so see, we're not asking for this optimal budget, and we're not reopening Ashby, because both of those would be too expensive. And, so here's what we're asking for. Here's the 3.06 request. And then here's the 2.47 if even you can't support that and we have to go even further down. So, like, I think presenting all four of those scenarios and saying, we're going to ask for this request, the 3.06. Here's what we could have, or here's what we really wanted to ask for. Here's what opening Ashby would have cost. And, just basically, I think showing people that, like, all of these scenarios have been considered will make it easier to convince the towns that, the 3.06 request really would be reasonable to support, at least for this year. And then maybe going forward in a subsequent year, if the fiscal situation allows for it, then try to sort of go more towards that optimal budget. Because at some point you're going to need more of an increase, because we're going to keep, we're going to keep having to, like, reduce services if the increases can't keep up.
So sounds like budget message from the superintendent. Obviously, that's been shared already. This packet will be shared after this meeting. People will have the information. We probably need a time where we can meet with the superintendent as a finance committee before the hearing to talk some things through with him, support what is needed for the budget hearing, talk this through with the whole finance subcommittee. And I do think, like you said, both are achievable. One is probably more feasible, going down to the 2.64, then up to the 5. So, the community having that information, I think, is really important, because it does show the due diligence of the administration and the school committee looking at it. So we can talk some of these things through with the report tomorrow night at the school committee meeting. I think the only thing that we started to talk about a little bit on the cost saving side was what TA from Ashby had asked the superintendent to look at more reconfiguration. And I know the superintendent said closing Spalding would, from a space perspective, not be practical, that it would be cutting it really close. I do think as a finance subcommittee, having someone bring that up, and for, when I start looking at that, that from a management perspective, we need to dedicate some time, sort of post budget season, really looking at the facilities and the improvements and what it looks like long term. I think the time is too short to consider that for the FY27, but I think that we need to put that on the agenda for us to really dive into. While it freaks people out from a planning of overall school facilities district planning of what's needed. I think we have to have those conversations. Go ahead, Robin.
I'm just wondering if the committee is going to vote today to make a recommendation to the full committee. I think, and then do want to, we still have our the other meeting scheduled for the snow date for this here. It is scheduled for tomorrow at 4 p.m. So I certainly could just update that and remove snow date if the committee decides they want to meet again prior to the school committee meeting. Let me know. Reminding you that option is on the table right now because it's already been posted.
I would be comfortable to entertain a motion that we accept moving forward to the budget hearing with the superintendent's message with this supplemental, with the caveat that Nancy spoke of the actual numbers from the governor's budget put into the scenario.
So you're saying move forward with the 3.06 budget with those caveats?
Well, and that we will try to get to the 2.64 with the governor's numbers. That's for the budget hearing. That's not for our school committee final budget vote that would be in March.
I'm comfortable with that. I will second that motion.
Well, I'm not making.
Oh well,
I'm asking to someone.
Yes, I am comfortable with that. Yeah. I thought I heard motion there. I just in my head.
All right. So I can make that motion. So let me see if I can word this correctly. I move that we bring the 3.06% budget request forward to the full school committee to vote on at the next school committee meeting, which is tonight.
Sort of not that.
Not that. Okay. No.
Can I make my
the budget hearing, Robin? Right, Kim?
All right, I rescind that. For the budget, bring it forward to the budget hearing for consideration.
Right.
So Kim, if you say the motion, then somebody just says, I move.
Oh, right.
And then we can do it that way.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's do it that way.
Do that way.
All right. So I would entertain a motion that we bring forward the superintendent's budget message with the supplemental material as provided to the school committee in his email of January 21st, that will go to the budget hearing in March for consideration with the updated numbers from the governor's budget as available to attempt to get to the 2.64 for discussion at the budget hearing, but not for our final vote.
All right, so moved.
And seconded.
Roll call vote.
Okay.
Michael Bassier.
Just a second. I have a question.
Yeah.
You said March in there, but our budget hearing is February.
Oh, February. Thank you for the friendly correction. Our vote is in March. Yes.
Our final vote is in March, but the budget hearing is that February 9th.
I accept that correction in my motion, Robin. So it's for the budget hearing in February.
Yeah.
Roll call, Michael Bassier.
Yes.
Keenan Francois.
Yes.
Lisa Martin.
Yes.
And Kim Craven, I'm a yes. So essentially that allows us to go to the budget hearing, give the asks, and then at the March time, that is when we will actually vote on what the budget number ask is.
With any adjustments based on the governor's budget and all that stuff.
Exactly, and feedback from the hearing.
Can I just clarify, like for the budget hearing, are we technically, like, is it technically FinCom or?
It's everyone. So what happens is the towns come in and they can talk if they like, or anybody can talk because we open it up to the public to talk. And then we have our discussion afterwards as a committee.
Right.
So that's how.
Mhm.
And then it's sometimes I've seen, like, I could ask if Andrew wanted to speak during our discussion and give us more details. I can allow that as the chair, different scenarios in there. But usually, like, the discussion is all 9 of us and the administration discussing, like, how the budget is going to move. But we take in input from the others. It's a long meeting, Keenan. Be prepared.
And
Well, I'm missing a 4-hour class for it, so it better be good. That's a lot of work I had to make up.
Oh, this is a class in its own. You should get credit for that, going through this
should.
process.
just
I
as
might have.
just as an FYI, you'll also be voting on school choice numbers, and I'm sure Brad will send something out on that, but I just want to let you know so you're not surprised by that. You'll see that there's a school choice hearing and then the budget hearing.
Should we meet before then?
Nancy, would you like help reviewing the slides or things, or how do you want, or it's up to you?
If you want to be updated, I think we should schedule it after give it some days to make those changes from the governor's proposal. I guess, yeah, it wouldn't hurt to have a change, a meeting somewhere in there.
So the 3rd, maybe.
Would be a Tuesday, or you could do the 5th. The February 5th would be a Thursday, or obviously Friday the 6th.
I would have to be Monday the 2nd, Wednesday the 4th, or Friday the 6th. I cannot do Tuesday or Thursday in the morning.
How about yeah, I couldn't do Monday. What would Friday work for everyone? Friday would work for me, the 6th.
That's fine.
Friday works for me. We'd do a morning again.
Yeah.
Yep. It looks like the superintendent is open on Friday as well. At this time, anyways.
February 6th, 8 a.m. I'll just throw it out there. We did do this meeting. I don't remember. Well, I wasn't a committee member then. I was just a student. We did this in person last year for reviewing the slides, or do we want to keep it online, or do we just want to?
I'm happy to do that meeting in person, Keenan.
The slide review?
Yeah.
Would that be on the 6th? Or are you talking about the full school committee?
I'm talking about the slide review on the 6th. That's just throwing it out there if someone can't make
Keenan,
it.
that was actually our review for the town budget. But yes, we did do that in person.
I can set that up, no problem.
Do that. Would that be at the high school probably, or?
I can. There's another school that's.
Well, it ultimately doesn't matter for me, but I would be coming from a distance. So, if we could do Nissitissit, then like fantastic, but I'm not picky.
then online is fine.
Hey,
well, no, it's perfectly fine. I think this, well, Lisa has something to say, so I'll let her talk. I'll shut up.
So this has come up within the last 24 hours, so I think I can bring this up. I just got off the phone with Brad. He doesn't know tomorrow. We'll know by later tonight if he's able to get out for the meeting tomorrow. So we may have to move the school committee meeting.
Mm.
So just be prepared, possibly. That's all I'm gonna say now, is because we don't know quite yet, so I'll be sending out something. But anyway, just an
Kim, you
update.
just let me know, Kim, what you prefer. If, we could set it up as in person and then go to remote if we needed to. You tell me what you need.
Can we just do hybrid?
Perfect. Done.
What are we talking about? Sorry, I missed
The
For
meeting
the
on the
6th,
Yeah.
we're going to do a Zoom.
the 6th of February.
Yes, the next finance committee meeting.
Okay, that works.
And I'll keep the agenda the same, Kim.
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem.
All right.
And that's 8 a.m., correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'll send it out in a little bit.
Yep.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Katie Francois, second by Lisa Martin. Roll call. Lisa Martin,
Yes.
Michael Labossiere,
Yes.
Katie Francois,
Yes.
Kim Craven. I am a yes. We are closing the meeting at 9:13.
Right.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Everyone, enjoy your snow day.
Oh, wait, Robin.
Yeah.
Just making sure there was no other public comment, right? No one else.
Oh, let me
joined?
just check. No, nothing.
Okay, we can keep our motion to close.
Right.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.